The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. We have officially migrated our mailing list back to the original platform. So we apologize for any double mailings or lack of mailings you might have received. We do have our 55 or so categories nailed down. So what you do is sign up for the mailing list by going to securityweekly.com/subscribe. You tell us what topics you are interested in, and you will receive notifications when we produce content in those topic areas. It's all part of a project to have our listeners be able to tell us about your interests to tailor content. It will be an ongoing project this year, so stay tuned for more information. In the meantime, visit securityweekly.com/subscribe. Tim Williams is the founder and chief executive officer of the data management company Index Engines, founded in 2006. Tim, in 1990, founded Cross-Store Software and served as its chairman and chief executive officer. Tim is here today to talk about how testing is the missing link for protecting your data against a ransomware attack. Tim, welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly.
Hi, nice to be here.
So, Tim, tell us about the missing link in protecting our data.
Well, if you look at the products that people use to protect themselves against ransomware, they're 100% focused on preventing the attack. And it'd be great if you could prevent attack, and it's a good investment in money. But you can't. You can't be perfect. There's lots of tech debt. There's lots of change. Persistent attacker is going to get through. And what we focused on is knowing very quickly that the attack has been successful, that your data is starting to be encrypted or corrupted, and tell you that within one backup cycle. So if you think, everyone's obsessed with the pandemic. But if you look at what they're doing, they're not focusing 100% of their efforts on trying to vaccinate people to prevent people from getting sick. They're also spending time testing people to find out when they've gotten sick, so that they can, and they're also working for a cure. And we see protection against ransomware in those three tiers, that you should be vaccinating against the attack as much as possible, but you're not going to get 100% efficacy on that. We can tell by examining the data that it has been attacked. We can tell it, we can integrate with backup software. So once a backup copy of your data has been attacked, we can tell you which files were attacked, which files need restoration, and very much limit the damage to one backup cycle.
Yeah, the advice always seems to be like to help in a ransomware attack scenario that you should back up your data. But Tim, in speaking with you, it goes a lot deeper than that, right? Is that you can understand from your backups when an attack is happening and be able to recover in near real time, correct?
Yes. We can tell by a quick examine of the backup that it's been attacked. We can tell the differences between yesterday and today. And we analyze over 100 different statistics about the data, compare it over time, the change rates. And if we've been installed on the second day of checking, where we have about a 99.7% accuracy rate in detecting a failure. And you only have to have a few percentage of the data being attacked for us to notice it.
That's interesting. So how do you differentiate a user that maybe encrypts a bunch of files versus a ransomware attack?
Well, what we do is because we're collecting over 100 different statistics about the data, and we run those statistics through a machine learning model. and we can tell which attack vector it is. What we can tell, for instance, that simple encryption is not enough. You have to have dozens of different characteristics happening on that data for it to be a ransomware attack. We've trained it on all known ransomware attacks, and we can. So it's very easy. If without that kind of analysis, you'd be getting enormous amounts of false positives.
Right. Yeah. So it's not just a matter of detecting when a file is encrypted, but you've basically done some supervised machine learning and training to say this is what ransomware looks like, and then you know what not ransomware looks like, even if people are encrypting files, and you're able to use those machine learning techniques to tell the difference.
Right. And we've got to train up on a couple dozen different attack vectors, and I said, and we also can report to the which files were attacked, and if this is an unusual scenario, but if you're also bagging up event logs, we'll be able to incorporate those event logs into the detection. We'll be able to tell which account was compromised because that was the account that last modified the files that were attacked. We'll be able to typically, we'll also be able to tell which file did the attacking as well, if you're incorporating event logs into your backup.
Oh, that's really, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, Tim, I was going to ask, I mean, obviously we know that if you have good backups, that the ability to recover from those backups is one way to, respond to a ransomware attack. I guess the challenge for a lot of organizations is, if their data gets overwritten in their backups with the encrypted data, then they don't have a restore point. So I assume that in this backup analysis, if you see something that looks like it's under attack, you want to make sure you preserve the previous version of that file such that you have a restore point, right? Because otherwise your restore point's gone.
The perfect scenario is you're backing up to disk and you have maybe 30 backups. You have a back window of 30 days of backups. So you'd be immediately able to recover from the previous day's backup. You would be able to restore. You could play safe, restore the whole thing, or you could just find which files you want to restore from that. One of our big channels is selling through Dell, and we've integrated our product with their data domain product, which store a lot of files, and we can be able to tell and help that system recover.
Right. So by identifying when it happened, when the last known good file was, so you know where the restore point is, right?
Exactly.
Tim, have you seen ransomware go after the backups, either to remove them or encrypt the backups, and how common is that?
Well, the famous Sony hack was they destroyed all the data on the data domains. That was they stored their backups on data domains, and those were all destroyed. That's just poor administration, because if you've got a good backup system, you should be locking the data after every backup, so it can't be disturbed. So every time you create a backup, it should be locked permanently. Most modern backups servers have retention locks on them.
Gotcha.
So,
and does I mean, other than big attacks and very targeted attacks, ransomware today doesn't necessarily go after the backups to encrypt those as well, or does it?
They try. I know of an attack that happened late last year where it was just not a very good, not comprehensive job, because they could have destroyed all the backups because they weren't locking them.
Gotcha.
But
yeah, I can see ransomware then trying to go after the administrative credentials to unlock, backups or something like that.
Right.
It gets to be a much more complex attack and not run-of-the-mill ransomware that can run anywhere, right?
The more sophisticated attacker is going to go after the backup data first. Go after Active Directory and domain control first, so really knock it off. And so you really got to have good preservation policy for your backups.
So it sounds like some tips and tricks, right? Make sure you lock your backups. Yeah. Make sure you have enough days of backup so you have a good restore point. And then have some software that can analyze when data starts to change, look like it's an attack. So you know that, one, you're under attack. Two, you know when the attack started to happen. So you now know, hopefully, where your restore point for any data elements are when you're getting ready to restore your systems after the attack. Kind of right?
Exactly. That's it.
Okay.
So Tim, in enterprise, I've been somewhat disconnected from this. We haven't talked about backups. If I have an enterprise, for example, with in the order of magnitude of tens of thousands of workstations, which is often the first infection point for ransomware. If I'm in the category of I'm doing a great job with backups, every one of those desktops are being backed up, and what's the most common methods and tools to do that?
That's what should be happening. Yes, everything should be backed up. It's not always the case. It depends on how centralized the management of the data center is. If you've got, I've seen companies where they've got a good centralized data center policy, but then there are applications that are kind of departmental and not as well protected. But if you've got a good organization, it's all being backed up. You also, what really helps in this kind of policy is having a good classification mechanism, really knowing where your important data is.
Right.
The data that is going to bring the company down, the most important servers, those should be secured and definitely checked every day. And more importantly these days, where the sensitive data and private data and all the company secrets are located. If you know, because I don't know if you've read the CrowdStrike report recently, but they're starting to see a new attack vector. If you refuse to pay, if you say you're going to use you're going to restore from your backups, they'll say, well, we have some data we're going to release on the internet if you don't give us the money. That's happened a few times last year, and it seems to be an accelerating factor.
Yeah. So it's important to classify your data so it can't be used for blackmail purposes like that. But also, now that you're conjuring up stuff in my memory, there was typically, if users have a folder to write to, right, on their computer, that's the one that gets backed up. So make sure you're storing your stuff there. So there's some user training and technology coupled together, right? Because you're not necessarily backing up the entire hard drive of every, tens of thousands of workstations. It's probably a select subset of directories.
No. Exactly.
Matt, sorry, did you have another question?
I was just thinking about the challenges of that data classification, right? I mean, we all know we should do it, but it's sometimes easier said than done. Any recommendations there, Tim, on how organizations can do it effectively? Because I agree with you. If you know where the crown jewels are, you put the right protections around them, you do the right monitoring. It's not always that easy, though. And so how do you approach a good data classification approach that is easy to maintain and update so you know where that critical data is?
Well, you buy my product, because that's another thing. And by the way, I mean, we have some other mode of indexing data. We've been supporting deep classification for purposes of organizing data, managing data, governing data, conforming, and for e-discovery purposes, producing data and litigation. So we have that ability. And what's unique about the workflow is most people will, most products who do that kind of thing, they'll run on the network on your primary data store, which is a pain in the neck, and it interferes with people. And after a while, they don't keep it up. But we can do that. We can also classify the backup data itself. So it's not, we're staying off the network. And once the data has been locked and pulled away, we can organize it, classify it, and generate reports, help you manage it that way. That's been our core business forever. The ransomware product is based on those indexing engines we built, the software we built for data classification and governance.
Got it. Yeah. So things like data privacy, classification, the ability to protect data against the different privacy regulations, that's also kind of embedded in there as well then, since you're doing some of that classification and indexing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tim, what advice do you have for enterprises today that are dealing with a much larger percentage of their employees working from home, and how does they adjust their backup strategies?
I mean, most people, I don't know. My company is now working remotely all the time, but we're dialed into corporate networks, so it really hasn't changed what the backup policy is or where the data is being stored. It's just remote networking into. We don't store a lot of important stuff on laptops. We store it on network servers or in the cloud. So I don't think it changes much.
Yeah.
Only if you had to do the individual employee machine backups, that might get a little more difficult being remotely. But if you're VPN'd in, I guess you could still get there. But as long as all the data you're interacting with is staying in that central place, then all your backup policies are going to stay as is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually talking with Sam about my computer at home, and she's like, it's not on the backup server schedule. I'm like, well, all my documents are in, a Google Drive or Confluence, right? And my source code is all backed up into Git. Like, I check in all my code into Git. So there's really not much on my data that lives on home systems or systems that you use to work remotely.
Right. The laptops are that are not really managed by corporate networks are the biggest targets of ransomware, of course, because they're the neglected endpoints that no one's really looking at that much.
Well, fantastic.
Yeah, good attack vector, and then you get a VPN connection into the corporate network, so it can infect the corporate network, and here you go, right?
That's I think the biggest problem of working remotely.
Interesting.
Well, good stuff. Tim, thank you very much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly today. Folks that want to learn more, Tim's information is in the wiki at wiki.securityweekly.com. Tim, thanks again.
Thank you.
And with that, that will conclude this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.